He wore torn shoes. When he had only one pair of shoes, he didn't have a bed, or 3 meals a day, or even a reason to hope Dot, but what he had was a dream Dot, and when the world laughed at him, he quietly got to work. It's a story of a boy named Brian, born in the quiet shadow of forgotten hills, raised by a single mother with hands worn by time and prayer. His father gone before he could say dad. His mother fighting each day to feed him with dignity. Even when the cupboard was empty, they lived in a small mud-walled house with one bed, which Brian gave up for his younger siblings. He learned early that sacrifice wasn't special, but it was survival. Every morning, before the sun touched the sky, Brian fetched water. Then he walked nearly 6 kilometers to school. His books wrapped in a plastic bag, his dreams hidden under silence. He didn't have Wi-Fi, or a desk, or even electricity. But he had something more powerful than all of that. He had hunger, not just for food, but for knowledge, for change, for a way out. At night, he read under a smoky tin lamp, pages yellowed, borrowed, and worn, ink big by Ben Carson, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, even old newspapers, anything that fed his mind and taught a lesson. And when he wasn't reading, he was in the shamba helping his mother grow sukuma and maize, the same farm that would later change his life. After Form 4, everything slowed down. The school bell stopped ringing. The uniform was folded and packed away. But the hunger, it stayed. There was no money for college. No promise of a job. No one handing out hope. So Brian did what he had always done. He went back to the soil. He picked up his djembe and returned to the shamba. But this time he saw it differently. Each row of sukuma wiki wasn't just food, it was a strategy. Each harvest wasn't just survival, it was capital. In between digging and watering, he kept reading. Books about farming, mindset, and online income. He borrowed an old smartphone from his cousin, just enough to watch YouTube tutorials on agribusiness and digital skills. When others scrolled for fun, Brian scrolled for freedom. He started planting with intention: tomatoes, onions, spinach, crops with market demand. He tracked prices, asked questions at the market, and kept a small notebook filled with ideas, quotes, and dreams. And slowly, the boy who once begged for fees was becoming a young man with a plan, not overnight, not without tears, but step by step from soil, sweat, and silent prayers. One day, as he stood under the scorching sun harvesting tomatoes, Brian paused. He looked up a soil-stained notebook in his hand, full of prices, plans, and dreams. And he asked himself, what if someone else needs this? That night, he typed out everything he had learned: how to grow vegetables with little capital, how to sell at the market, how to avoid common losses. Then he turned it into a small digital guide and shared it on WhatsApp. He sold his first copy for 100 shillings, then another, and another. It wasn't much, but it was proof. Proof that his struggle had value, that someone out there needed what he had learned the hard way. With a little income, he bought better seeds, started a second plot. Then came a video, a simple clip showing how he irrigated using recycled bottles. It went semi-viral on Facebook. Suddenly, people were calling him the young farmer who reads. Local schools invited him to speak. A county officer reached out with support. He wasn't rich, not yet, but he had built something far more powerful than money: respect, purpose, and a voice. And in that voice was a message that couldn't be ignored anymore. Today, Brian still walks through his farm, but now with confidence. He's not just planting vegetables anymore. He's planting vision. For the boy who once borrowed books, now writes his own. For the youth who once sat silently in the back, now stands boldly at the front, teaching others. And when people ask him how he made it, he smiles and says, I didn't wait to be chosen. I chose myself. Because here's the truth. The world won't always hand you opportunity. Sometimes you have to create it with your own two hands. And a broken djembe. Brian's story is not just about farming or books or business. It's about refusing to give up, even when life gives you every reason to. So maybe you're like Brian. Maybe your shoes are worn, your dreams hidden, your voice unheard. But listen to this. You don't have to be born into privilege to create purpose. You don't need perfect English or a degree to build impact. You need courage, discipline, and faith in yourself. This is your sign. Start where you are. Use what you have. And never stop believing in your own story.